Right, so let's see what T1 is going to do to try and kind of change this. Now, I do think that they got very, very greedy in that last draft by taking support on R4 when they should have prioritized their mid lane, considering the enemy mid hadn't also picked. They should have known that Azir was going to come in there, but I don't know why they didn't want to go with it. So I feel like that game would have been completely different if they would have actually gone with the Azir there instead, and you know, they could have also focused their bans around that Azir. Now they're gonna ban the Aurelia away here. I think that's because, you know, Faker didn't really show up on it at all, and if GenG can play it, then they need to get rid of it. Jace ban standard. He just provides way too much in terms of being a lane bully and late game poke. So he's gone Azir ban. I'm surprised they actually banned that away. I guess because they don't want to B1 it and they're scared that GenG will R1, R2. And the Azir, the Viego ban, you know, because they're red side, so they need to, you know, bit purple tax just because T1 have first pick. Now bans, I mean, maybe something like a Diana here, like a Diana ban, or I wouldn't even be surprised like an Aphelios ban, to be honest, just because T1 might not want to take it in a Renekton ban. I guess that works because teams just love picking Renekton. So let's see what they go for here. So first pick, I mean, I'd expect maybe like a Xin Zhao, Lee Sin's ban. So Rise is also a really good pick here, and that also means that Faker gets a tier 1 champ. So Rise again can also be flex top, but here we're gonna see a Aphelios Thresh again, just because it's a very good combo, and I'm glad that GenG are abusing it like massively, to be honest, because it's just so strong. So again, a really nice draft there from GenG. I really like what they do with their drafts. It feels like they're very up to date with the meta. So we've got the Ashe. Obviously, Ashe can potentially do some things into Aphelios. Now they picked Leona here, which Leona is a busted champion, but they've just counterpicked bot lane there. So a little bit interesting. I guess Leona is still broken, so that's fine, but I would have loved to see a Braum there instead. It would have just fit much better, especially considering the enemy have also picked their support, so you know that the Leona isn't going to come through. So GenG banning away top laners now just to try and kind of pinch top as much as possible, especially considering J4 can play very heavily around top, knowing that the Aphelios is safe bot lane because he has Thresh Lantern. So we're going to see what SKT ban away here, and they're just going to look to pinch probably mids, and that could potentially cause problems for Rise. So Syndra ban, Azir's already banned. Maybe we'll see an Orianna ban here as well, just because Orianna's very good into Rise, and they already have J4 showing. So an Orianna ban here is almost necessary for T1. If they don't ban it here, then I feel like they're in a very bad position in terms of this draft. And I think that they will probably lose from draft again if they don't ban it. So surely this is where the coaches are asking Faker what is good into Rise, and surely he'll tell him the Orianna. We've got 8 seconds. There we go. Thank God. So this is actually still a potential winning draft for T1, just because those two bans are really important to keep Rise alive. So from GenG, we get to see a Zoe. I mean, Zoe's a very aggressive early game champion, so I actually like that they're picking her here. It's extremely aggressive early, and it can potentially force Rise out of lane, which is very good. Now on top of this, we've also got the fact that the bubble can be used through walls, and it gets extended when it's used on the walls. So if the J4 decides to invade and Zoe can push the wave in, then it's going to be very easy to invade. Again, I really like the draft so far. Camille, which is great as kind of like a blind pick, but they're going to need to take, I was going to say, but they need to take something like Xin Zhao with it, so that Xin can play very easily around his lanes. Now, it's actually a very good game for Xin Zhao here, because he's got CC in literally every single lane, and if they do take the Camille, so I guess the Gwen is great as well. That kind of means that he's going to play more towards mid and bot. Just because Gwen is kind of a laner that's quite sufficient on her own. She is pretty good into the Zoe and Aphelios, so because they're very long range, and if she ever drops a W, then they will be in a really good position, because if she drops that W, a lot of the damage is going to get completely negated. Now they are going with the set here. I would have liked to see that Darius, because I think this is a really good game for Darius. They're all very short range, so It's a shame that he didn't decide to lock it in. I mean, set is okay too, especially into the Gwen, since he can just run into her over and over, and he doesn't really need to worry about not being able to get spells off through her W. I think as long as he positions properly, his ult will always go through as well. Actually, it'll always go through no matter what, I'm fairly certain, because he actually gets in range with the ult in order to ult them away. So right here, I do think T1 have a much better draft than last game. This draft actually has some room to breathe. Obviously, you've got Gwen, Ryze, and Ashe, who are all fairly good champions late game. Ashe maybe not as much as, say, a Ryze. She's not like one of them hyperscalers, but she'll help through that mid-game transitional phase in order to get them to the point where the Ryze can just completely pop off. So again, pretty good drafts from both sides though. Carrier also goes Leona this time, which he is a lot more comfortable. We've seen some very good plays from him on the Leona, especially into a lot of very hyper mobile champions. So he's definitely very confident with the champ, and we're probably going to see this game. Now, I do think that GenG have an insanely strong early game though, and that's going to kind of make way for the Aphelios to scale, but I do also feel like GenG is extremely early game based, so if they don't get that early lead, then they might potentially struggle, especially when you've got picks like the Ryze that can instantly clear at 1 to 2 items. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see where this one goes. I think, personally, I think T1 might actually have this, because one of the big things that we have said about T1 is they do know how to stall those games out, especially game 1. They had GenG had a massive tempo advantage, but they still managed to bring that game back. So we'll see how they deal with this. I think Ashe is very oppressive early into the game, and bot lane is pretty good for T1. Now Aphelios will scale harder, but Ashe gives him a very hard time, because if she's the one that's choosing to run him down, then there's not really much you can do. We can see that both sides longsword 3 pots, just because they know there's going to be a very messy lane. And Ryze with the corrupting pot and Zoe, so we'll see what goes from there. Right now, again, they have a Xin Zhao here too. Now he is going to start on blue buff, just because there's not really much gank potential in top lane with the Gwen. She doesn't really provide any additional CC to help him gank, whereas bot lane he has massive amounts of CC and mid lane. So choosing to start blue here is actually very good from T1. I like to see junglers actually pair things smart. Because this top lane, like, they don't win the 2v2. So here, this is one of the problems that we do get though with Leona, is if she tries to engage on top of anybody, then Thresh can actually flay her instantly out. Now she did go E first, which is very nice to see. So this is kind of referred to as kind of like a range lane, because Aphelios has massive amounts of range, so does Ashe, but you know, the Aphelios has a bit more scaling. So we're gonna see Kyria hit level 2 off his minions, so I would have loved to see him start walking up earlier to try and force him away for that level 2. Now they do get Prio in bot lane. J4 is actually just going 3 camp, but that was a really good move. Clit is 2 million IQ here. Holy, he's gone red into chickens into Gromp, which is the fastest way to get level 3, but then he also managed to dodge the Ashe from the E, which is very good. So yeah, Cled's very aware there of kind of the utility that T1 are actually providing here, so very interesting. So a slightly slower early game. This is kind of okay for both teams though, because they both have early game junglers, so they're both forced to really do something. And their smite is coming down nicely, so 9. So 9 picks of Riot, 9 picks of Zoe. So Zoe's actually played quite a lot in the regular season of Korea, which is good because Zoe's a very, very powerful pick, especially with things like the Nidalee and the Jinx and all these kind of pick champions. She gives so much value with that bubble and with her Q as well. So Clid coming in mid, the exhaust gone down already on Faker, and the bubble comes in. Oh, he has to flash out instantly. So Clid a little bit slow on that. Obviously, flash on jungle for flash on mid is 100% worth. So Faker in a little bit of trouble here if GenG decide to play the mid jungle duo now. And Kerry are going for a really, really aggressive fight now. One of the big things with the Philios as well is he can root people with his Q, which then means that Thresh can actually throw a raw hook, so he doesn't actually have to hit the flay before the hook when he's with the Philios in lane, which is another one of the dynamics that makes this lane so powerful, because then he has his flay in order to CC them even longer, especially when he gets 6. You can land the hook to pull them in range to flay them into your ultimate, which will actually do a considerable amount of base damage. Now there's a huge wave top lane here. Kana actually misses the cannon here, but I really don't like this because we see that this slow push is building for quite a while, and J4, instead of coming and ganking or potentially looking to dive and force this 2v2, which they do win, he decides to take his Krug camp, which I really just don't like. So I don't get why he did that. It would have been way, way better if he would have just gone and ganked. The little TikTok banner though is pretty cool. I like that recall though. I love that J4 skin. So J4 is back on the map right now. He does have his Iron Spike power spike, so that's pretty good. Xin Zhao doesn't. Xin Zhao's only starting a pickaxe right now, so that's, you know, it's not rough for him, but the fact that they have that, the J4 has that, means he's actually going to have a little bit more pressure. Now, in this matchup of J4 versus Xin Zhao, it's basically whoever can, you know, have the most pressure early will end up snowballing massively. So even having that advantage of having the Iron Spike over the just pickaxe alone is very, very good for the side of J4. If he manages to find Xin Zhao in the jungle right now or forces 3v3, then he's actually going to win it really hard. They've also got wards in there, but there's a nice sneaky ward over the back there, so they know that the J4 is actually here since they spotted him on vision. So he is just walking around. I don't know why. Oh, he just went to get a ward on the Krug camp just to reveal that Zen is there, but now I would love to see him instantly start this dragon. They have priority in mid, they have priority in bot, and they can see that Zen Zhao is resetting. So this is a free dragon to the side of GenG right now, and it's an Infernal, so it's going to go really, really well for this early game comp that they actually have. So obviously they have the all-out aggression there, so really looking forward to seeing what they do with this dragon now, though, after they get it. J4 should just look to reset instantly and go up to his red buff so that the Xin just doesn't walk up instantly and clear it right now, which he might potentially be looking for. But there is a control ward in that river, so he's going to get spotted out from there. J4 isn't actually going to reset, he's just going to run straight up there, which does give Xin Zhao a longsword advantage in this fight, but that also means that J4 gets to clear away his wolf camp before he goes into that red buff. So Xin Zhao just finished his smite item, so they both now have 900 smite, so we could potentially look to see potential objective steals here. Now, the thing with the Xin Zhao versus J4 matchup is neither of them really have a way of stacking damage with their smite. So if we were to look at somebody like Olaf, Olaf has a massive amount of true damage on his E, so he can actually proc that E with his smite and pretty much outsmite a lot of different junglers because it's true damage. Now, you have things like Lee Sin that have his Q that reactivates and does a massive amount of damage, but that can be cancelled. So if, say, for example, say they had Lee Sin this game instead of J4, Lee Sin instead of Xin Zhao, then Thresh can just flame out of his Q, and then his smite won't actually do enough damage to finish it off. So it's kind of the advantage to these kind of true damage junglers. Now, obviously, you have things like Elise that can actually repel to get into the pit and then Q as well, which is pretty strong. But overall, it's not going to be something like an Olaf. But here, J4 nor Xin Zhao have those tools to, you know, stack with this might. I mean, Xin Zhao has his Q, which he can stack with an auto and do a little bit of damage, but it's still physical damage, so it's still going to get reduced by physical damage. Now, we do see a fight here. T1 jump in, but GenG instantly kills the Xin Zhao for first blood, and then the Leona as well. This is just terrible from... Kyria's just really not playing up to standard, and Warner, it seems like when he doesn't get Viego, he performs considerably less, so... Or considerably worse, should I say. So, really, really worrying for the side of T1 this game now. So we see Clid actually come up to try and just push this in. So what he's going to do now is potentially look to force a dive. They're going to stack, get the towers. Oh, he's actually just leaving instantly. This is terrible. This just gives, like, what? That was really bad from GenG. They just gave her the ability to clear it. So here you can see that the Zoe actually zones off Teddy, and then the set instantly gets the ult onto the Xin Zhao, so he can't do anything, and then, you know, they just kind of get shut out. So unlucky. I mean, the thing is with T1 here, you don't have to fight for that Herald. You're going to outscale them very heavily. You can just give away the Herald if it's not a good time for you to fight. Now, the reason why you take Xin Zhao in a comp like this is because champions like Ryze and Ashe need somebody early game to be having some sort of pressure on the map so that they can, you know, farm safely, and to avoid them just straight up stacking MR early. But we see Kyria just really missing the ball again. Like, Kyria has been one of the stars of the show in terms of T1 that we've kind of seen, but here he's really just kind of inting the game away, like by going for these engages over and over, which that's kind of what you do on Leona, but you like to see it kind of less on the kind of professional level. You don't really expect to see these kind of things come in. So now we can see, you know, a lot of aggression in bot lane. Again, Aphelios is on green-white, which means he can poke very heavily in this laning phase, which is very, very good. Obviously, those chakrams do a considerable amount of damage, and it's one of the reasons why Aphelios is so strong, is purely because of his white gun. Combinations that you can have with it: white-blue for team fighting, white-red for survivability and objective control. And here we can see, okay, nice, but he doesn't manage to finish her off. Warner getting caught inside the jungle though. Leona comes to try and save it. She does actually save his life, and this might actually be a good fight for T1. Canna's just come in, and he's pretty fed. He's using his ultimate. So, oh, he uses ult the wrong way there, which is very, very sad. But we also see them pick the Zoe there. This was a very, very good fight for T1. They actually just managed to get a considerable lead, and especially on this Gwen as well. 2 kills towards the Gwen. That's going to get her a Riftmaker instantly, and, you know, I would like to see Soak Boots, but getting Riftmaker spike this early is incredibly powerful, and it's going to mean that she's going to really, really pop off. Now, boots are great, especially on junglers, but when it comes to laning phase, unless you need the boots to be able to kind of avoid situations, or unless your kit likes boots, like for example Ashe, she likes boots to like instantly because she has slows, which means if she gets those boots, they can never really run away from her, where it's a little bit different for other champions. But if we watch this back again, we can see that Warner actually gets caught inside the jungle. He does manage to use his ultimate to avoid a lot of damage though, and then Leona comes in and just stops him. We get a nice Ashe arrow from Teddy. He's too low to actually come into the fight though, and then Gwen TP's in and just goes nuts, instantly kills Rascal. Even though she gets knocked back, she does use the second ult a little bit to she does int it a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. She's got so much damage. They managed to pick the Zoe because where is she going to go? Even if she flashes, she's going to get chased there. So really, really good play from T1. Now GenG have got a second dragon, and it's going to spawn a Cloud Soul. So unlucky again. They've got some really unlucky rolls on these dragons, but what you can do now is, if you're GenG, you can just play for gold and kills now. We do want to see Kyria and Teddy just back away from here, but I think J4 will actually EQ ult the Ashe. Okay, he actually EQ'd and then ulted the Leona just because Ashe died so quick. So, again, really poor warding from the side of T1, and that really did punish them massively. So I mean, this game is going to be very much down to the Zoe and the Rise to carry now, which, I mean, Rise is 140 CS right now, and he's managed to get through the first, say, 15 minutes completely unharmed, so that's really good from the side of T1, obviously. Because this Rise is going to get to a position where he's extremely powerful now. So here we can see that Philios has got his Serrated Dirk and his Shield Bow. He really needs a Wit's End here though, so I'd like to see him just sit on this Dirk, not turn it into a Collector, and just get his Wit's End here. If he does that, especially if he picks up his Negatron Cloak soon, he's already got more than enough damage because he's a Philios, so he just needs to actually get Wit's End so that he can survive the Rise and the Zoe damage, and he's going to be very difficult to kill. Unfortunately, I think he will just resort to going straight into Collector, which is a really big mistake, but like, you can afford to go into defensive items when you have enough kind of overall damage that you can carry team fights, which he can do for sure, especially the amount of survivability he has out of his team. He has a Thresh, he has a Set, a J4 as well, which J4 has terrain, which is very important. Since if J4 gets a good ult off and locks, say, 4 or 5 people in because they go for a jungle fight, Philios is going to get his ult off very easily. So I think the win conditions for GenG are very straightforward here. I think from the side of T1, they're a little bit more faded due to the fact that they don't have as much kind of zone control. But if Leona keeps getting picks like that, obviously J4 can EQ out. If the Q is actually connected on the E, J4 will always go, even if he gets CC'd. So that's very important about the champ. It's kind of similar to Ezreal E, that does something similar, or say Tristana Jump. They do similar things. So T1 are actually going to prioritize this objective. Now this is terrible in my opinion for T1 because they're prioritizing a Herald, even though that Herald is probably only going to crack a tier 1 in mid or top, but the entire bot side of Xin Zhao's jungle is actually available to take, and he doesn't go for it. Just so grief. Like, if you want to go for that Herald there at Xin Zhao, you have to make sure that you've cleared all of your bot side, because otherwise the J4 just comes and cleans it up, and then all of a sudden you're way behind. Now Canna is very strong this game. He's got his Lucidity boots now. I'm pretty sure this patch was 11.16 was the patch Lucidity boots got nerfed, I want to say, or actually it might have been way before that. So let's have a look. Lucidity boots. So they were changed in. Oh, I'm sorry. It was ages ago. They were changed in 11.8 to be worth 950 instead of 900. But I mean, so I don't know. I feel like he just wanted that tier 2 boot spike on the Gwen, but I feel like going with the penetration would have been just so much better, considering he is going to be one of the main damage dealers in this game. And also that pen's kind of nice because they're going to be building a little bit of MR due to the fact that both solo laners are AP based. The only thing I'm thinking is that he hasn't got it because he's going to look to rush Void Staff next item. Although actually he does have a Ruby Crystal, so maybe he's going for something like the Cosmic Drive instead, which is okay on Zoe, on Gwen, don't get me wrong, but I'd just love to see more raw damage come out from him, considering he's so far ahead. So they managed to get a BDD, and that Leona engage was amazing. He has stopwatch as well, so he survives. And now they actually get ruler as well, because the amount of damage that Canna is outputting is massive. That's a very good fight for the side of T1, and what they can do now is they can actually get Dragon off this, which Dragon for T1 is actually not that bad in comparison, because they obviously have the Gwen ult, which is a massive amount of damage, so the lower cooldown on that, the better. Ryze ult doesn't really get affected by it, but we also have Ashe and Leona ult, which just means that they can go very aggressive slightly earlier. So even though Cloud usually isn't very good, when you're playing into a team with a champion like Aphelios, who is one of the best kind of team fight scaling ADCs in the entire game, you need to go for those picks as often as possible. So if they can manage to stack, say, 4 dragons here, 4 clouds are actually fairly significant. So, you know, we'll look to see where this goes. But if they manage to get them 4 clouds, that could be very, very interesting. A total of 48 ultimate haste. That's going to be a lot. That's roughly, I think, 35% cooldown reduction on your ultimate available. So it's going to be reducing the cooldown by about a third. We see a fight coming in top here. Faker does get picked out. Kind of doing everything he can to potentially win this fight, but he is going to get shut down as well. Very unfortunate to see that Riftmaker just didn't really do enough in terms of healing. And, you know, he only really went in because Faker got caught. So this series, Faker's like really not with it. Like he's, I'm not sure if he's very, very kind of nervous, or it just seems like he's making a lot of mistakes that Faker doesn't usually make. Now, obviously, I do hold him to a slightly higher standard than other mids, purely because he's been at the top for so long, and you know he's always been that like GOAT. So you expect to see like world-class performance out of him. And you know, it's been a little bit rough, to say the least. So again, J4 is pretty big right now. Zoe's got Ludens too. She has got Dark Seal again. We're never going to see anybody commit to a Magi's, I don't feel. Because either they don't get to full stacks to make it gold efficient, or they're just too scared to upgrade. When it doesn't matter if it's solo queue or competitive. In solo queue, you always want Magi's no matter what. Even in competitive, they're still so valuable. So we get to see this fight again. Kyria with a flash ult into the E on BDD, so she guarantees to keep him there. She doesn't even need to use the Q. And then Ruler gets kind of run down because he's really out of position. Faker tries ulting in to try and catch somebody else, but it's just never going to happen. Now this is a top play we see. Faker walks up to just clear the wave, and you know he's not waiting until the minions stack to use his E on them. Rascal, really good positioning so that he doesn't actually get caught. We see the TP come in from Canna, but the instant response from BDD means that they're just both going to die instantly, which, you know, it's very, very sad to see, considering Canna just used his TP and got absolutely nothing and got shut down out of that. So you just hate to see it, and it just feels like this isn't something that Faker usually does. So overall, it's just a little rough. Again, I think so. He's going into his Zhonya's next, especially considering that stopwatch has been spent now. If he didn't get stopwatch, maybe we would have. If he didn't use his stopwatch, should I say, maybe we would have saw him go into something like a Seraph's here. But he did use it, and you know it was a little bit of a waste. So right now, Philos again, he did go into that collector straight away, which I really just dislike. So very, very unfortunate to see. That could actually be the demise of the team, because it's like he already had his Serrated Dirk, which was already a big spike, and all he really needed to look to do. Okay, so the Ashe ult into the Leona ult into the Leona EQ. The life is just instantly dead. Now they did invest a massive amount for this support, but he did have a bounty, so they did get extra gold from that too. Now I think that did go over to the Leona, so a little bit unfortunate that she got the kill there, but again, the fact that he died is more important than who gets the kill. Now they are, okay, so Kyria did actually pick up that ward. I was going to say they are leaving wards just kind of scattered around, which is providing them vision of, like, obviously there it didn't really matter because Ashe ult was huge. Now we do see Teddy's got his Wit's End now. Now, there's not as much pressure on Teddy to go for a Wit's End as there is a Phelios this game, since, you know, I don't think he's going to here as well. He's picked up a pickaxe so far. We're going to see what he builds that into. But, you know, Ashe isn't against a double AP solo lane threat. So, now, although Gwen does do true damage, I still think it's way more beneficial to just get that, that combination. But here we can see that she just gets completely zoned out. Leona does get it, unfortunately, with the Aftershock proc. But overall, completely fine. T1 are actually in a position where they can potentially pull this game back if they manage to get a good pick. But GenG are looking relentless. Now, if I'm T1 here, I do want to fight for this dragon because, like I said, that 48 haste from Cloud is amazing on champions that are going to look to spam their ultimate. So the Gwen, the Ashe, the Leona, it all plays well on them. Now, it's probably the weakest dragon that you can get on them. Obviously, Infernal, Ocean, and Mountain all provide more value, but overall, I think the value that provides is still worth fighting over in a game like this, especially, you know, when you're playing against things like the J4 ult, the Zoe ult. So we do see a pick and instant kill on the Thresh, so life out of position once again, and Canna really showing up as a carry in this fight. The amount of damage he did, he just completely one-shot that Thresh. So like, Canna's a force to be reckoned with here, and I think we'll actually see the Gwen banned in next game purely because Canna's playing extremely well on it. Now we do actually see him just completely just beating up Rascal here, and Rascal actually has to use his flash to get out of that. So very good for T1. They didn't manage to secure that objective. Now the Gwen is just rotating. Now the unfortunate thing is the fact that this tower has been taken in top lane by Rascal. But that was an amazing lockdown by the Leona. She just went crazy. We see Canna will be able to use this movement speed to maybe catch, but the Thresh just instantly lanterns out. So it's kind of the value that Thresh provides. He's just such a good champion. Like, honestly, I think he's being very heavily slept on a lot recently, which I don't know why. He's one of the best supports. Like, that W needs to be whacked up to like a minute cooldown in order to make him balanced, and even then it's way so powerful. So here we can see that Canna just instantly blew up life. So there's plenty of hope for the side of T1 here. We see Leona gets another catch onto Clid, but the EQ from J4 is just too oppressive, especially when you're playing it into things like Leona. Now Teddy is kind of chasing down Ruler here, but that actually allows for the Leona to get in range. You get a really good stun off. Now the reason why that was important as well is because Kerry was very low on mana, but we can still see there that he's just continuously running them down and trying to chase them even more. So Ashe, we can see her building into the Wit's End now just to prevent some of that damage from the Zoe, and you know, Wit's End is a pretty good item on Ashe, but that also tips the gold so that it's in T1's favor now. So now they have an advantage in terms of gold, and they do have a much harder scaling team. So the Ashe, again, 017, like a good support. I mean, Ashe is basically a supportive ADC, but we see a massive 1.2k gold lead in top. Nothing really in jungle, but we also see a 1k gold lead in mid too, which is very interesting. Aphelios is quite ahead of the Ashe, but Ashe is a supportive pick this game, whereas Aphelios is their main kind of damage. So we see Kerry again, another amazing EQ in to get in range to ult them both, and this is just going to be crazy. Clid actually using his ult for the terrain, which is really nice to see, but we got stopwatch coming in from Faker, and they just completely wiped that fight. They get 2 clean kills for nothing. So Canna really putting in work this game, to be honest. Now they're actually going to get the dragon off it. I don't want to see them. Okay, nice. So they didn't hit that ward purely because if they hit it while there's a pink in there, it's going to reactivate the ward, which they really don't want. So they put a pink down so that they do know this is going to be less than 50-50. So this is kind of a 25-75 play for T1. They do need to leave since they are having to contest a J4 and a Zoe smite. So luckily they do understand at this point that Zoe has that smite, so they do back away from it, just because it's more like a 25-75 at that stage of the game. Just because, again, it's going to be a 50-50 between the jungler and Wanna, but then he also needs to contest the Zoe smite as well, which if they stack that instantly, that's going to be 1800 true damage. We do see this fight again though. Clid, nice use of ultimate, but it really isn't going to mean much because, I mean, Rascal is... Canna is just way too far ahead at this point of the game. She's extremely strong on this Gwen. We do see the Cosmic Drive come out like predicted. I do think she's going into a Zhonya's next, but she does already have the stopwatch. So if they just win one fight with that stopwatch, great. Now, unfortunately, Ashe did use her ult before she had her E available. I think if she would have just waited on that E and then used E to kind of guarantee that she lands the ult a little bit easier, that would have been way better, but She doesn't do that. J4 going to look for a potential pick on Warner here. I think he was coming down to try and catch Faker in the side lane, but it's really, really good shadowing by the Xin Zhao at this point of the game. So now we can see Faker manages to get that tower, which is really, really good for him. And, you know, that wave is going to push into Set. I would have liked to see Set kind of just freeze that wave instead of hard pushing it and deny that entire side lane away from Faker in the future. But he doesn't do that. He just instantly starts forcing it back in, which is going to allow Faker to just farm it up. Now, Faker is on 3 items now, and he's on his Seraph's Embrace now, which is a huge power spike for Riot since it gives him so much additional damage. Now, T1 are actually in a position now where they can potentially look to start ending this game out. Xin Zhao's on his 3 items as well with a stopwatch, and they do have triple stopwatch / Zhonya's available for the side of T1, whereas they only actually have 1 available for the side of GenG. Now, stopwatch is stopwatch and Zhonya's is arguably one of the most unfair kind of mechanics in the game into certain kind of situations, especially if you're going to be walking around looking for these 5v5 fights, which they are going to be looking to do now. So the amount of stopwatch difference that they have could potentially win this next fight for them, especially if Aphelios tries to get multiple people with his ult and they all just stopwatch it, then he's going to actually lose a considerable amount of damage in that fight. So we are going to look to see what they do with them. Now, the Gwen has gone for Morello. I guess she's so far ahead that it's not as bad that she's kind of going with that sort of item, especially considering Faker is on his 3 items now and he does want to avoid getting anti-heal. So it's okay. I don't mind it here, to be honest. I think it's a fairly good pickup, especially considering she can proc it on almost everybody with her ult if they fight in the right situations. So really positive to see Ashe on her 3 items, including her auto attack modifier. So the good thing about Ginzu's is Ashe's passive basically increases the amount of the amount of additional damage she does after she slows somebody. So it's just a very kind of good item in general, since it allows you to proc on hits multiple times, and that, which does make Wit's End even stronger because it procs on the Wit's End on the hit. So she's going to be doing a considerable amount of damage with it, and the attack speed is very, very good for her too, especially when she uses a Q. She just goes kind of crazy. This is a really good position for them. I want to see the Ashe just ult instantly, and there we go. So she manages to hit the Clid, but it was just a little bit too slow there. Now GenG are potentially going to start kind of running them down here. They want to make sure that the Zoe doesn't get a hold of a smite though, because if she does, it's going to be almost impossible for T1 to do much. Now T1 going into mid lane, securing mid lane prio again. I do want to see them just push this wave up and get that control ward gone, just to get rid of a lot of pressure out of mid lane that GenG are currently exerting. So T1 are currently at a 3.5 gold advantage, and this is just going to scale even more because Faker's just going to go nuts. I think he is choosing to go Cosmic Drive last item. That's what the Fiendish Codex is going to build into. That's just going to give him more movement speed, a big boost of ability power, and it's just going to help him kind of weave in and out of these fights, which is big. So we also see the owner get a nice ult on the Aphelios, but the Thresh lanterns him out instantly. Keria does get caught by Thresh Q now, but Kanna's just running them down, especially with that kind of protection from her kind of zone where they can't really do anything in. So Kanna just doing absolute work, kills 1, kills 2 almost. There we go. So the kind of stopwatch or GA is really not as effective when you're playing into champions like Gwen, who can just instantly guarantee that she gets her true damage on you as soon as you come out of that stopwatch, or GA. So another really it was a pretty good fight for T1. We're going to look over it again. So here it was very unfortunate that they didn't use their wards to stop the Thresh Lantern going through. He just manages to instantly, I think he cleansed there to get out. The J4 locks them all within his ultimate, but then gets chased down. Fortunately, there's a fight going on in the actual game, so we don't get to see that. But Kanna just running behind, and she manages to instantly kill Kled and then the Aphelios too. She is way too fed this game. Like, this is, Gwen is a complete monster. I'm surprised they haven't been prioritizing it more, to be honest. So now we see them just rushing down Baron. They'll be able to get this very easy. They have smite advantage, and the Zoe currently doesn't have a smite and is nowhere near the objective. So they're just going to get Baron off this. And the important thing is, Dragon is also in a minute for Soul. So they're going to get the Baron here. And then they're just going to go straight into Soul of the objective, which GenG aren't in a position where they can actually do anything. So this game seems a lot more controlled. I think the T1's draft is much better in this game compared to the last, and I do think it's because of that lack of Renekton. Look how much Canner is doing when he's on an actual champ like Gwen. Just blind Gwen instead of Renekton. Like, it's so much more impactful. You can see the Canner's just running them down, doing absolute damage. Even though the ult comes in from Rascal, she instantly goes on life because he's squishy, and then Faker, it's Zonya's, but he does die, unfortunately. They do manage to just kill Rascal up because Gwen gets her true damage off instantly because he's stopwatch. So we're going to see this again. So the play on this Baron. So we see that they started to try and do it. But then Gwen just comes in. She does get knocked up from the J4 EQ. But it really doesn't matter. They're in such a tight space in this situation that she just gets to completely melt them. So again, extremely nice to see from the side of T1, and this could potentially lead into this being a game-winning game. Like, it's very hard for GenG to come back into this game now because they have a slower comp all round. Like, their comp is, sorry, I mean, it's a faster comp in the early game, but then when it gets to this kind of mid to late game point, they just can't contest the amount of damage that is going to be coming out of this Zoe and the Rise. And I feel it's so disrespectful by Aphelios here as the kind of primary damage to not build a Wit's End here. Like, the Lord Doms, like, I mean, I know Lord Doms is a great item, but the Collector's Int, and oh, he's got an IE here too. Hey, how's it going, Philpoo? No, why would you see me up along? Right, so we can see them. I mean, this is just going to be an easy game to close out at this point, to be honest. Okay, so they're just gonna get resets off here. I think they should just 5-man reset, to be honest. They do have this Soul, which is really good, and especially on even things like the Ashe or the Leona, that is very, very good for kind of just picking off people. Now, we do see the Wit's End come in from Ashe as well, which I feel like it's really not needed when Gwen also has it. So I feel like that's a very, very interesting buy as well. I'd even prefer to see something like a GAE here, even though it's not that great, but that Revive can potentially win them the game here since it's 35 minutes. And also, this is like I previously said, like this Scorch that people are taking at this point in the game, they could have pretty much 2.5 thousand gold for free with Gathering Storm, but they just choose not to for some reason. Now Rascal gets instantly picked, and then the Xin Zhao manages to jump to him with his E as well. That's a massive range ability. So we can see that they're just looking to siege now, and they do have top inhib, so there's already a lot of pressure there. Unfortunately, they don't have Baron buff, so but they're just going to push this in now, get this bottom inhib. Canner's going to also get mid because he can put down his W, and they can't really do anything into that area. So they're just going to get the triple inhib now, and they're just going to wait for these supers and just end out with them. Especially considering we have 3 super waves that are going to come in. But actually, Carrier just wants to look to jump in. Life, again, completely ints, but there's just too much damage from the Zoe. They just can't contest it. And the Rise, to be honest, but the Zoe pick here was absolutely huge. And they're going to also use the Rise ult to potentially kill Clid, but they don't manage to get him because he stopwatches. So, unfortunate, but overall, like, this was a much better game from T1. They really, really actually looked like they could potentially beat GenG in this situation. So, 2 very convincing games from each team. So, let's go into game 3 now and see kind of where that goes.